If I would have known how being in a relationship with somebody who was mentally and physically abusive would have affected my relationship with God, I would have never done it. Over the last few months, I've been feeling very stagnant in relation to like growth when it comes to my relationship with God. I've been feeling very rebellious, very prideful, and my heart was like extremely hardened, and I just couldn't understand why. Anytime I felt God calling me to do something, I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do anything He said. I didn't want to lean into Him. I didn't want to spend any time in relationship with Him. And I couldn't figure out why all of this stuff was happening until yesterday when I had the revelation that I literally treat God how I would treat the last person that I was in a relationship with when things didn't go my way, or I felt like I was being controlled and I wasn't given the freedom or the space to maneuver how I wanted to, or actually express how I felt. And the reason for that was because I was looking at God through the lens of my last relationship. I was basically comparing him in a sense to the way that the last person I was in a relationship with treated me. In my last relationship, I could never express how I felt because I would be gaslighted for it. I could never do the things that I wanted because I literally had no control over my life. I was in a very, very abusive and very mentally manipulative and controlling relationship to the point where I experienced so much mental damage that it has affected me a lot more than I actually thought it did. When you're constantly put through an abusive cycle over and over and over again, that becomes your norm. So, being in this relationship with God is in a time period where by now I would have given up on the relationship if things weren't working out because let's be real. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you're 2.5, 3 years in and you don't see anything changing or just things are constantly getting worse, then you're going to want to leave that. And because the two relationships that I was in prior to this last relationship were also along the very like similar timeline, it's like 2 years, almost three or whatever, there's like some internal clock inside of me that's saying, okay, well, it's time to give up. And I was ready to do just that. I was ready to give up on my relationship with God because the things that I thought should have been changing hadn't changed yet. And the things that I wanted to change, God had been pushing back in order to give me the things that I need versus the things that I thought I wanted first. So in my last relationship, the only thing that I could really do to defend myself was to not do anything, to rebel, to not put the initiative in to do whatever it was that my ex or this person wanted me to do. And in a way, that was the same exact thing that I was doing with God. I'm like, okay, well, if this is not happening, I don't feel happy, I don't feel secure, I don't feel safe, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically go into freeze mode and just stay there. And I've heard so many times before that, we treat God the way we see our earthly fathers, but I was treating God the way I saw my ex, because when I see God, I don't just look at him as my father. I see somebody who I'm constantly walking with, somebody who I'm technically married to. I am the bride of Christ. So walking with him for the rest of my life and thinking, if this is always going to be this way, then I have to find a way to cope within that. And God was trying to break me out of that mentality because whereas in the past, that was literally survival mode. I was just trying to do things to survive, to get through the day, to avoid getting beat or getting cursed out or getting whatever. And God is trying to show me I am not that person. And God has already done so many things to show me that he is not my ex. He is not that person. He is not somebody who makes me do something just because he wants to gain from it. Because everything that God calls us to do, not only does he get the glory out of it, but we gain from it too. We get growth, we get success, we get the peace that comes with obedience. But the enemy is very good at taking something that feels familiar and making you think that it's the exact same scenario when it is not. And out of all of the things that I have been through in my life, I don't know if it's because this is the most recent traumatic experience, but the way that I treat God has literally been based around this specific experience. I find many cycles or attributes to this walk with God similar to things that I have been through with somebody who was toxic, that now that I'm with somebody, God, who is not toxic, who actually loves me, who wants the best for me, it's very easy for me to say, okay, well, this feels familiar. I've been through this before, and then just go straight into autopilot or default mode. Walking with God, we have to learn to get out of this default mode. This is part of him resetting and renewing our mind, is going through things that we may have been through before, but going through them the right way. Because there are a lot of principles to things that we might have been through in the past that are similar to walking with God God that were just done incorrectly. Like in my last relationship, he basically wanted me to make him my God. He wanted me to follow him without question. He wanted me to worship him and to love him and to just give my all for him. And it was very hard trying to do that for God when I've already done it for somebody who didn't care about me. So let this video serve as a reminder that if you're going through something similar, if you're going through this walk with God and you're feeling tension and you're feeling like you've been through this before, to remind yourself that walking with God and going through whatever it is that you're going through with God is nothing at all close to what it is that you were going through with, you know, whoever it is in your life that may have caused you these feelings, whether it be a partner or a parent or anybody that you were in close relationship with that may have betrayed you, that may have done you wrong. God will never betray you. God will never leave you. God will never forsake you. And sometimes when God is allowing us to go through these things, is because he wants us to grow from it. Sometimes it is necessary for God to re-break bones, in a sense, for them to heal correctly, for him to press these triggers, for us to realize, hey, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be worked on, because these are areas of our life that whether we have a future partner or future friendships or relationships or colleagues or whatever, these might be things that you experience within other relationships that could cause harm to other people or to yourself if you're not aware of them. And remember that no matter how it feels, that God does love you. God does want the best for you. God does have good plans for you, to prosper you, not to harm you, for hope and a future, a successful future, a happy, peaceful, joyous future with him for the rest of your life and all eternity.